All right. I guess it's still morning, so good morning, everyone. I'm John Sweeting. I'm the other John at ARIN. I'm the Chief Customer Officer, and I'm going to run through a few points with you today. The agenda is RPKI adoption update, resource management services, and participating in the ARIN community. And just to Steve's last point, David Farmer was, as part of Internet 2, and was very active on the advisory council for, I think like 12 to 14 years. And he looked out for policies that would benefit or at least not hurt the Internet 2 community. When David moved on, we had Anita Diclich that came in, and I believe Brian Jones from Virginia Tech is on the advisory council now, but it behooves the community to make sure you have at least one, maybe two or three representatives on that advisory council, because they are the ones that pretty much set the policies in the ARIN region. We do have, on the ARIN board, we have Nancy Carter from Canary, kind of looks out for that stuff. I don't think we've ever had an Internet 2 person on the board of trustees, so as Steve said, you could change that. Okay, this is a slide we show that shows ARIN in the RIR system. We cover U.S., Canada, and the Caribbean islands, and you see there's 4 other RIRs: LACNIC for South America, Latin America, RIPE for Europe, APNIC for Asia Pacific, and AFRINIC for the Africa region. Okay, RPKI adoption update. It's getting better. It's not perfect, but it's getting better. Slowly but surely, it's getting better. For the most part, we have, I believe it's probably 17 or 18,000 organizations that could use RPKI in the ARIN region, and we have 4,879 that are doing that. Of that, most of them are hosted because that's the easiest solution to use. Yeah, so we actually have like 35,000 organizations, but 7,000 of those are ASN only holders, and another 14,000 organizations are still not under an agreement, so they're not eligible to use RPKI. This is a breakout by industry types. As you can see, the government's at 8%, educational institutions. So we did the .gov, .edu, and then all the rest of them to figure this out. But to Steve's point, as you see on the commercial ISPs and enterprises, there's 12% of the organizations, but that's 50% of the /24s that we have that are covered in the commercial. So it's a very large organizations that are taking the time to adopt this. In the EDU, it's pretty close. You have 11% of the organizations we identified, and 15% of your /24s are covered. Government's going to change soon. We're working with them. They still have some tickets open from last year that will put them under agreement and allow them to adopt RPKI. Resources and agreements. So how do you know if your organization legacy resources are covered by an ARIN agreement? When you go in, when you log in and you go to your dashboard, there's going to be a yellow bar in there that looks just like this that's going to tell you you have one network that's not eligible for routing security services, and that is because they're not under an agreement. Another way to find it is in Manage Your Networks. You can search for networks, and you can actually limit the search to the networks that are not covered by an agreement, and that'll pop them up there. So there's a couple different ways where you can see that, and once you see that, then you can use that easy button and take care of it. Well, first you got to get the agreement, right? So it's not as easy as an easy button, but once you get the agreement, the easy button will work. Benefits to having the agreement: you get access to the routing security services at ARIN, which is the authenticated IRR and hosted RPKI ROAs, or delegated if you so choose. Not many people go with delegated. There is a hybrid where you run the certificate, the CA, but you use our our publishing and our repository. Another benefit, participation in ARIN's governance. As Steve was mentioning, that goes to participating and voting in the elections. It's a lot easier to transfer resources. It was pointed out that Internet 2, it's about $3.4 billion worth of IP addresses. If they're not all being used, if you do some cleanups and you are able to transfer some of those out, I understand that a /16 goes for about $3.5 million today. So something to think about, and by being under an agreement, it's actually already, a lot of the work is already done because we know that you are the right people to be the source for that transfer. And then it's also a written agreement that specifies the registration services that announce to the internet who holds the IP addresses, and of course that's done through WHOIS. Services that are available to organizations not under an ARIN agreement, it's really everything that we do except for the RPKI and the Internet Routing Registry. You can still do DNSSEC without being under an agreement. We went back and forth a little bit on that. At one point they said no, you had to have an agreement, and we offered it out there, and there was people that had used DNSSEC before the development was put in to prevent it. And I looked at all the issues and said, look, this, DNSSEC is not something we really developed. It's a very easy thing. They just add their records to their reverse DNS and it's there. So let's just put that as a legacy service. So that's why it's a legacy service today. You can also participate in the policy development process, posting a mailing list. You can, like I said, you can do everything with ARIN except for you will not have access to the RPKI or the Authenticated Internet Routing Registry. Resource management services. So what's an authenticated IRR? Steve pretty much called it out. It's a mechanism for providing verification of the legitimate BGP announcements by mapping the ASN that's supposed to be announcing it to a list of networks. We provide users with the ability to create, update, and delete, all using ARIN online, or you can do the API. We just recently put that included the ARIN online with that. So what is RPKI? Of course, it's the public key infrastructure. Creates a chain of resource certificates that follow the same structure. There's the way the IP addresses. So, IANA gives it to ARIN. ARIN then allocates it to a customer then assigns it or allocates it to their customer, and all that is can be annotated in the RPKI. It also gives the legitimate holder of a block of IP addresses the opportunity to make an authoritative statement to the world, to the global internet, of which AS is authorized to originate their prefix. Steve did mention ASPA. ASPA's coming along to take away the hole that's there now where somebody can spoof an originating AS number. But the one thing that RPKI really is good at, and it's a lot of the problems with announcements that shouldn't be made, it's the fat fingering that somebody does that all of a sudden black holes your announcements because they fat fingered the IPs. RPKI really stops that in its tracks. So that's one thing to think about. Why is it important? As we know, if you're under an attack or misconfigurations, disrupts your internet connection, which is pretty easy to detect usually, but it can detour your internet traffic. It can send it somewhere it's not supposed to be going. That's harder to detect, but routing security will help prevent that. And it also makes people that want to, as Steve kindly put it, borrow your addresses, makes it very difficult for them to borrow your addresses. So it establishes a level of trust, gives you, the operator, better choices, and it limits the impact of a configuration mistake or if it's nefarious activity of a bad actor. RPKI data, how is it used? So resource holders make authoritative statements. Basically, it's that easy button. Here's the AS number, here's the IP. This should always be the originating AS. It goes into a validator that confirms the crypto keys are valid. Network operators establish an RPKI session between the validator and their connection to perform route origin validation, which I'm not sure Steve mentioned that too much, but route origin validation isn't something that everyone has to do. If your upstreams are all doing route origin validation, then you're pretty much covered, because nothing's going to get through to you that isn't a valid route. But it's really a preference. The larger ISPs, the center of the global internet, they need to be doing route origin validation. As you get further out to the edge, it's really a choice you have to make. And the resulting validity state can be used by the network operator to generate filters on the router. So you can, you have valid, invalid, and unknown. You probably don't want to drop unknown. You probably do want to drop invalid, but you might want to look at them as well. So it just gives you that choice, the choices to set up filters the way you would like to see the routes. Let's see. The three deployment options is hosted. That's where ARIN does all the work except for putting the information in and hitting the easy button. Delegated, which is you do all the work. You run your own certificate authority and a publication server to publish your ROAs. And then there's the hybrid where you can run the certificate authority, the CA, but use ARIN's publication functions and repository. So RPKI service development priorities, as Steve mentioned some of these, the ROA actions are going to create or delete linked IRR objects. It's actually the second quarter, Steve. I told you third, I lied, it's the second. This is going to be, it will be an opt-in, or opt-out actually. You're going to be opted in that if you create a ROA, it's going to generate an IRR object or delete an IRR object that doesn't match that ROA. But you can opt out of that if there's some other reason that you don't want to do that, you are able to opt out of it. And that was the glitch we had when we developed it, first developed it and deployed it back in September of last year. There was no way to opt out of it. And when I saw that and John Curran saw that, we immediately told our engineering team, pull that out of production. We can't really force this out there at this point in time, because not everybody's going to want to do that. And there's other reasons for using the IRR and creating route objects than just for routing security and ROAs. In the second half of 2024, we're going to have improvement to the ROA functionality. The consultation it completed Friday, but we extended it a week to get a little bit more information on that. And it's basically something that, again, Steve had a big part in driving, and it's called the ROA intelligence, BGP intelligence, because it's going to show you, like, okay, if I generate this ROA, what's it going to do to the route announcements I'm already making out there? And it'll show you that very clearly. So that's going to be a really good addition coming out the second half of this year. And then some of the advanced features on ARIN Online, you're able to download the full list. You can then do what you want with it and then upload it. And also allow organizations to opt out from RPKI services. Participation in the ARIN community, ARIN membership. So we started out 4 years ago with the only general members we had that could vote in an election were ISPs. That was it. So if you were registered as an ISP, which most schools didn't, they registered as end users, so that because there was a big difference in fees, you weren't even eligible to vote in our elections. We did some harmonization for the fees where everybody pays the same fees based on the amount of address space they have. So and then we harmonized that everybody with IPv4 and IPv6 under agreement became a service member. And then once you're a service member, you can become a general member. But just before I get there, the last thing we did was this year, January 1st, we put all the ASN only holders under the RSP, the Registration Services Plan, which goes the fee, it's a separate fee from IPv4, IPv6, and ASN. However, you only pay the highest of the fees, so we basically modeled it the same. If you have 0 to 3 ASNs, it's 3x small. If you have 4 to 15, it's 2x small. 16 to 63 is extra small, and so on. I think we have maybe 11 members that pay because they have so many ASNs, but for the most part, you're paying for your IPv4, IPv6. So now all those service members are also harmonized to where they're service members. So that's where we end up with the 25,000 organizations that are now eligible to participate in the ARIN governance. So as Steve pointed out, I can't say it any better than he did. You guys have more members than we had ballots cast last year, so you can have a big impact on the elections. And that's the main thing. You push a button, I think it's maybe here. Yeah, so it's kind of hard to see, but right there, those arrows allow you can check your status. It shows you what your status is. That's that first arrow up there. If you're a service member, then you're eligible to request general membership. You can access the general member request form through the actions drop down. So that's the arrow all the way to your right, and there's a drop down where you can then apply for general membership. Why vote? Steve covered it very well. All these policies they're produced by the community. We have an advisory council that is elected officials that actually shepherd the policies through. And if you don't have a voice at that table, or at least somebody that's watching the public policy mailing list and seeing what kind of policies are coming out, you could get bit. I think Internet 2 was very lucky to have David Farmer on there for so many years because he was awesome. He was excellent. I was the chair of the advisory council for 6 years, and David was one of the prime participants on that advisory council to make sure we got things right. 2024 election slate, the Board of Trustees, there'll be 3 open seats this time. That's because we expanded the board to 9 seats, and this will be the last year. This will be the year that completes that 9. The ARIN Advisory Council, there'll be 5 full-term seats there, and then the Number Resource Organization, that's the number council that is our representatives to ICANN, and there's 1 elected representative from the ARIN region this year. The timeline in the spring, we'll be calling for nominations. Nominations today are self-nomination. Only self-nominations are accepted, but anyone can self-nominate. In the summer, actually the spring is the nomination committee, and you have to be a general member to participate on the nomination committee. So that's another reason to have general membership. And then in the summer, call for nominations. Those are all self-nominations. And then in the fall, you'll have the publication of the candidate slate and the voting period. Voting period usually opens up the last day of the ARIN Fall Public Policy Meeting, which this year is in Toronto, following NANOG. So here you go. Our next meeting, ARIN 53, 14 to 17 April, is in Bridgetown, Barbados. We have 3 ARIN on the roads this year, 1 in Reno, 1 in Kansas City, 1 in Ottawa in September, and then our public policy meeting 24, 25 October in Toronto. We have a help desk right outside these doors here. I'll be there as well as Eddie. Doesn't have to be RSA agreements or anything. It can be anything that you want to talk to us about as far as ARIN policy or ARIN tickets or any issues you might have that you want to have me look at. We love to get problems that we can solve at these meetings because it actually validates us being here. Thank you. Is there any questions? Is there time for any questions, or is that probably no questions anyway? That was a pretty good coverage there. Thank you.